Alright lads, today we're taking a look at the T10 prototype, also known as the TKX. This is a sorely needed addition to the Japanese tech tree, which did only have one quote-unquote top-tier main battle tank. But anyway, the TKX comes before the Type 10 and is located in the 7th rank of the Japanese tech tree at bat rating 11.0 for arcade, realistic and simulator. To unlock the vehicle, you will have to grind out 400,000 research points before unlocking it for the cost of 1,080,000 silver lions. To put this vehicle in your lineup, it will cost you 310,000 silver lions, and for the expert and ace qualifications, it's 1,080,000 silver lions and 2,200 golden eagles for the ace qualification. So before the latest update, the Japanese top tier lineup was pretty scarce. You only had the Type 10, as well as the Type 90s, which were a little bit lackluster. But with the addition of the Type 10 and now the TKX, is the Japanese tech tree worth grinding? Well, if you want to know the answer to that, lads, stick around for the rest of the video. Alright lads, welcome back. Starting as always with the mobility, and the TKX is powered by an engine producing 1,200 horsepower. The Type 10s were basically designed to be light enough to operate over the Japanese light bridges, so with a weight of only 44.4 tons, you'll have a power to weight ratio of 27 horsepower per ton. This gives the TKX fantastic acceleration in my opinion. Combined with the great top speed of 71 km per hour, forwards and reverse, you can certainly lead many banzai charges into the enemy lines, but instead of being mowed down by American 30-06, you're getting game ended by the Ka-50 spam. Top tier War Thunder at its finest. Joking aside though, the mobility of the TKX and the Type 10 are fantastic in my opinion, and are basically up there with the Leopards and the Abrams. But what about the survivability? Well, just like the Japanese World War II tanks, the TKX and the Type 10 do leave a little bit to be desired when it comes to the armour department. They did have to make a lot of cuts to get that weight down to 44 tons, and part of it was the protection. So if we take a look at this cutaway, you can see that we only have a crew of 3 men. This is inherently pretty bad for survivability, as you don't have any redundant crew members which can take the place of dead crew members. Pretty similar to the Soviet tanks at top tier, if you take a round in the side you are pretty much dead in one shot. But the TKX does have an ammunition bustle in the rear of the turret, which does have blowout panels. This is similar to the American Abrams, where the TKX only contains 14 rounds of ammunition, whereas the Abrams contains 22 rounds. Anyway though, the armour is surprisingly good on this tank in certain places. The Dorchester or Chobham armour that this tank uses is only really present in thin strips. This gives this tank quite misleading armour figures, as it is thick in certain areas, but in the vast majority of this tank's frontal aspect, it is quite an easy penetration. Anyway, the thickest part of the lower frontal plate is around 640mm thick, which in theory protects you from all but the most powerful APFSDS in game. But as I said, an enemy is almost certainly going to shoot you centre of mass, where your armour is a lot weaker. Moving up to the turret, and strangely the armour protection here is a little bit lower than the hull, with only around 600mm of protection. Again, I'm using the thickest part I can find in the armour viewer, and protection does vary wildly. But they don't say no armour best armour for no reason, and the TKX does feel quite like a Leopard 2A4. It's very fast, very mobile, mediocre survivability, but it doesn't really matter, because you can just get around the map and get yourself into good positions. Another reason that this tank is also very survivable, on top of its great mobility, is the addition of a laser warning receiver. This gives you a ping whenever someone is using a laser rangefinder on you. You usually don't have enough time to react if it's an enemy tank, but it's very useful if you're going up against helicopters, where they need to keep a laser fixed on you. This gives you quite a lot of warning to get into cover, and does save you quite a lot of times. If you are fast enough though, when facing enemy tanks, you can pop some smoke grenades which may save you from time to time, but that isn't a solid strategy in my opinion. We also then have 8 smoke grenades which fire 2 at a time, giving you 4 charges. Again, some great passive and active protection systems in the form of the laser warning receiver and the smoke grenades. But your biggest strength for staying alive in this tank is definitely the mobility, so fire a few shots in one place and then relocate. You've got the mobility to do so, so you may as well exploit it. While I compared this tank to the Leopard 2A4, especially in terms of the mobility and the survivability, it is by far better when it comes to the firepower. This tank is armed with a 120mm TKG. You have 35 rounds of ammunition in total, with 14 of those rounds being stored in the ammunition bustle in the back of the tank. This tank uses an autoloader system, which reloads every 4 seconds, giving you a fire rate of 15 rounds per minute. This high fire rate, in combination with your ammunition and the mobility, makes these Japanese tanks absolute flank and spank monsters, especially on the more open, wider maps, where you can really exploit that mobility. The tank does also have mediocre vertical guidance characteristics, with only 7 degrees of gun depression and 10 degrees of gun elevation. Bear in mind though, you can roleplay as a shitty lowrider and make your suspension drop at either the rear or the front, giving you extra gun elevation or extra gun depression. Thankfully, just without the shitty R&B music. We then move on to the ammunition, and our stock shell is the JM12A1. This is a bog standard heater fest round travelling at 1140 meters per second and penetrating 480mm of armour. In the first rank of our upgrades though, we have the JM33, which is a DM33 clone. This travels much faster at 1640 meters per second, being able to penetrate 481mm of armour. Considering this is a tier 1 unlock, this is a very good APF SDS round in my opinion. It's got a high velocity, fairly high penetration, and a lot of post-pen spalling. But to top it all off, we also have the Type 10 APF SDS round. This travels at 1780 meters per second, even faster still, and can penetrate a staggering 615mm of armour. It also has very good angled penetration, as well as post-penetration damage. This APF SDS round, the 4-second reload speed, the average armour, and the amazing mobility makes the TKX one of the best tanks in the game in my opinion, along with its bigger brother, the Type 10. When these two tanks were first introduced, well, when the Type 10 was introduced, Gaijin, being classic old Gaijin, messed up its gearbox, and it was incredibly heavy and felt just as slow as a Challenger 2. That now has changed. These tanks feel incredibly light, they've got very good acceleration, and you can zip around the battlefield in them. While the survivability does leave a lot to be desired, you aren't as trolly from the front as some Soviet vehicles. Basically, no matter where you get shot in this tank, it is likely to penetrate. Kind of like the Italian quote-unquote top-tier Arietes. They've got armour, hypothetically, but in-game it just kind of gets penetrated all the time. But as I said, you can use your mobility to avoid being shot if you play the game smart. I'm British though, so that's a rarity for me, but maybe it's not for you. If you've seen my other video, I did get my first nuke playing this tank. I thought people would be happy for me, but everyone just called me a noob in the comments, basically turning me into the Ben Shapiro of War Thunder. Coping, sieving and dilating aside though, the TKX is one of my favourite tanks currently in the game. I think if Japan actually gets a decent top tier lineup at some point in the future, maybe a decent SPAA as well as some more light tanks, then the Japanese tech tree would be one of the best in War Thunder. While it can't yet rival the top 3, the Americans, Soviets and the Germans, mainly due to not having enough backup vehicles at top tier, the Japanese tech tree is probably one of the best smaller nations now. And if you like the look of this tank, I would definitely recommend grinding it out. It's a long grind to get up to the top tiers of the Japanese tech tree, but in my opinion, it is well worth it. Well, that's it boys, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing, and be sure to let me know down below in the comments what vehicle you guys would like to see me review next. And finally, I'd like to say a big thank you to my YouTube memberships: Wolfie Fly, Joseph Metcalf, Tomster013, Just Someone, Dr. Bob, Doboa LX, Tans, William Tessier, and Lola Alfonsi. Again, thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far into the video, leave a comment saying eggs on toast.